Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Report. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Well, mighty Joe, we're previewing the offense and the defense. We already previewed the offense and posted that. Now it's the defense. And I got to be honest, I'm really excited. Just going out there in camp. This is going to be my 12th season. I don't know how many years you've been covering Texas Tech, but going out, you know what to look for after a while. Let's put it that way. And in terms of length, speed, overall size, and then depth. Yeah. I've never seen Texas Tech have all of that on defense like they do. I mean, I really believe that, like, say, when Mahomes was here, they would have won the Big 12, even with UT and OU here. If they had this defense. I'm not saying there's like a ton of superstars, but you have a bunch of guys that were like 4-star recruits, heavily recruited, that you've developed for a couple years. Now they're getting thrown out there with some of your transfers and other guys that, veterans who know what they're doing. And I just feel like the time is now on defense. I'm really excited about this defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, you got a pretty good DC.
Boy, that helps. That helps a lot.
You trust the guy who's throwing the shots over there. He's proven himself here at Texas Tech, no doubt about it. So, it really, I don't see a glaring weakness on this defense. I'm not sure I even see a serious weakness, let alone glaring. Right. I mean, the secondary you can talk about. You got some new guys back there and everything, but looks really, really strong. You mentioned the depth. They lost Dylan Spencer for the season with an injury. I mean, in the past, that would have been catastrophic.
Absolutely.
As a player.
Oh, yeah.
But now they've got so much depth, particularly at that position.
Yeah.
That outside linebacker position that, I mean, you're not going to miss a beat there.
No.
And you're going to be without Charles Esters for this opening game. So what do? You bring in Isaac Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Where's the drop-off?
There is no drop-off there.
There isn't. I mean, you can go 3-4 deep at a lot of these positions with no change in effectiveness out there. So it's just, you have to go back a long time to see a defense that on paper looks this good at Texas Tech. Yeah,
I mean, I really agree. And I know that we serve up Kool-Aid and all that, but I would say you and I are pretty guarded after last year, coming off of that. But look, in terms of depth and the size and the speed and all that, the recruiting rankings, which we don't produce, show that these guys were highly rated. They were offered by a lot of the teams you're going to be playing. So there's some truth there. But then we've seen them, we've seen them in games like Amir Washington. We saw him, what he's capable of. Yes. And, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks in that bowl win over Cal in the Independence Bowl. And then good spring, great fall. Like, I think he was second or third string going into fall camp, and then he won that position. And that was someone I kept hearing about over and over again. So I thought we'd start outside linebacker. Amir Washington started. I'm a huge fan of him. He's wearing an 88, which is that's a receiver number, really. Right. But the thing that stood out to me in all the practices I saw at fall camp is his tremendous effort. I mean, he's 6'2", 270. His effort, and then he is so quick off the ball, which is what you want out of a pass rusher, right? I mean, I think he's going to be, if you look at it, if I was an opposing offensive coordinator, I would look at Amir Washington like he's their best pass rusher. So, and I saw that in camps. He actually got lined up early in camp against a younger offensive lineman, and he was already at the quarterback before the dude got out of his stance. So it was like, whoa, which happens for young players. One of the big surprises of fall camp was Harvey Dyson. He's a guy who was challenged by the coaching staff, like, it's put up or shut up time. By year 3, you got to start producing, or we got to start looking at maybe replacing you. And that's just the truth of the sport now. And by all accounts, he stepped up, and he's starting opposite Amir Washington at outside linebacker. So you mentioned Isaac Smith, Joseph Adedire, very good player who I thought was going to be starting. Some really good players in terms of depth. Imagine if they had Dylan Spencer as well. But no, I think outside linebacker is in great shape.
Yeah, and that's what I would have thought even at the end of last year.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was looking at the roster for this season, I said, man, boy, they are going to be loaded next year, the outside linebacker. And a lot of that had to do with what Washington did.
Sure.
In that bowl game where he was, looking like Gabe Rivera or something out there.
Yeah.
So, it's just, and it's a really important position to have that kind of depth, because you want guys with energy to burst off the ball and rush the passer, and ideally to chase some plays down from the backside if they have to. And so, yeah, to be able to rotate all those guys in, they're going to be playing, I guess, 6 guys, man, maybe at those positions in a lot of games. And you usually don't have that sort of luxury, that sort of depth at any position to be able to do that. A huge advantage, and I'm sure DeRuyter's pretty happy about it.
Same kind of thing up front. Let's go back up to the defensive line. I mean, I don't ever remember Texas Tech. In the 3 decades I've followed Texas Tech, at least somewhat closely, I don't remember. Now, some great standouts, absolutely. But they have 6 or 7 guys. To give you an example, Jaden Cofield's a redshirt freshman, 6'2", 6'3", 305 pounds, something like that. And when I went out of fall camp, I heard a sound that sounded like a shotgun went off behind me in what I call the pit. Offensive line, defensive line, outside linebackers working there. And I turned around, and it was Jaden Cofield. I didn't know it was Jaden Cofield at the time. I just saw a dude, couldn't see his number, working on taking on double teams. So he was going against 2 other guys who were going to play a lot, 300-pounders, and working on stopping the double team and separating and all that. And he did it again. Coach Fitch, the defensive line coach, Zarno Fitch, had him do it again. And he absolutely rocked a dude who's going to play a lot in this drill. I mean, right off the ball. And then McGuire mentioned, I think that same day, that Cofield had dominated a portion of the scrimmage. And he's not even expected to start. Quincy Ledet is who I know you've liked. He played well last year as a reserve. He's questionable, but I think he's going to play. If he does it, this week, that's okay. And the depth helps. It's okay. But he supposedly had a great fall camp. He looked good when I saw him. Marion Banks, the dude who's completely changed his body, going back to a couple of seasons ago. He was out of shape, kind of lollygagging around with some practices. He looks like a completely different player. I mean, I have to be like, is that really due to Banks? I don't believe it, but it is. And he had a really good game. I think it was against, can't remember who it was, where he blocked the extra point. He had a QB pressure that led to an interception. Maybe UCF. I'm not sure exactly.
He was also good in the bowl game, I think.
Yeah, he was. So those 2 guys starting. You have Trayvon McAlpine, who's been injured a lot. Another big dude they like. They wanted to play him as a true freshman. Braylon Rigsby is in the mix there, too. DeBraylon Carroll. Yeah, James Hansen, your 2 transfers. They really like DeBraylon Carroll. Like, DeBraylon Carroll will be one of the first guys in there off the bench, if not start some games. Yeah. Where they say that's somebody that I've been told off the record, even like, hey, this guy, he's good. This was a good pickup. We hit on this dude. So that's exciting to have that kind of depth and size up front on the defensive line for Texas Tech.
Yeah, Banks in particular is a guy I'm really interested in because I believe that's a guy that, if he has the right mentality, he's playing in the NFL.
Man. Yeah, I agree.
He's got the body type. You might see him swing out to DE because he's kind of a taller guy instead of a
defensive tackle,
nose tackle or something like that. You could see him play outside in the NFL a little bit. But I think he's got all the athletic ability in the world, all the skill. It's just a matter of channeling that, and to the extent that it's coming to him now that he's getting serious about it. Then he's going to make a huge impact this year, I believe. And with Amir Washington, an outside linebacker, you're talking about 2 really potentially special guys.
Yeah,
they're going to be playing DE, outside linebacker, inside, creating a lot of havoc. And as you say, the depth is a really, really nice thing as well.
Yeah, and like you pointed out, and this is something the coaches have said a lot. They're able to play, and I think this is a very hard skill to quantify, but I've had talks with even Zach Thomas about it, because you really see it in the NFL, but summoning a tremendous amount of energy for short bursts of time is a skill in football. You really see it at the NFL level, but if you could do it in college, it gives you a leg up. Sure. I mean, you don't really see it in the high school level. Guys just dominate or don't, because it's a different kind of skill, and you don't hear it talked about a lot. But these guys are going to be able to do that, and then somebody else is going to come in who is at least almost at that level to where there's not that much of a drop-off. And it's just unheard of at Texas Tech. I mean, that's when you start really turning the page on defense. And we haven't even talked about what I think might be my favorite position group going into the season on the entire roster, and that's inside linebacker. Jacob Rodriguez and Ben Roberts, that 1-2 tandem of, you have 2 team captains at just inside linebacker in Rodriguez and Bryce Ramirez, who looked great in the spring game. I'm a huge fan of. What a great story. Really got to talk with him some, like 30 minutes at Big 12 Media Day and got to know him a little better. What a great story. If you don't know it, hit me up on the board or whatever. I'll go into more detail, but very interesting dude, but good football player. You have John Curry coming on like a freight train, as McGuire said, but he's looked really good. I've seen him actually at 3 different linebacker positions, and he looks a lot like Ben Roberts, to be honest, who was a freshman All-American last year. So that inside linebacker group, that's not even counting Justin Horn. Michael Dingle's working a star some. He needs to get healthy so he can get on the field, but he's still in the mix of inside linebacker. A lot of depth, a lot of skill, size, speed, and then some experience there at inside linebacker as well.
That's right, and guys who know what they're doing out there.
Absolutely.
That's really important at the inside linebacker positions. In some ways, they're sort of like the quarterback of the defense.
Yeah.
You got C.J. Baskerville back there who's going to sort of coordinate that secondary a little bit as well. But very important to have guys who really know what they're doing, who know how to communicate, get guys lined up. And, they talked about after Rodriguez got hurt against Wyoming last year.
That was bad.
The defense sort of fell apart a little bit,
Yeah.
And you could sort of underestimate how big of a factor that was for the defense last year. He didn't come back until very late. So to have him, fingers crossed, healthy the entire season is really, really going to help. And it'll be interesting to see how he and Ben Roberts sort of play off of one another, how they may be able to help each other out. Roberts, obviously a stellar freshman season.
Yeah.
How much better could he get, to be able to do that as a freshman. So, as you say, a very exciting position.
Another position I'm excited about is star. I think it's going to be better than last year. A.J. McCarty, who transferred from Baylor but didn't get the waiver, he had to sit out. People raved about him. He's looked really good. But Brendan Jordan looks like a different dude. He lost some baby fat. He is a very physical, aggressive player. Those two guys together at star, I really like.
Yeah, I mean, McCarty was a pretty big-time player. Man. He did some good things out there, so he should be able to translate that coming to Texas Tech. So huge there, and then you talk about the backup guy, Sanford, or Brendan Jordan.
Brendan Jordan,
right? He was a guy who I thought maybe had some problems a little bit in coverage last year. As you say, lost some weight. That will help a little bit. And playing at the star position, he's going to be more pitched toward that line of scrimmage. He's probably be involved in the run stop a little bit more, maybe not exposed out there in coverage as much. But if he has lost some weight and gained a little bit of quickness, that will help him when he's in coverage too, and make him more of a complete player. But potentially a very good position, I think.
Yeah, you kind of touched on the secondary. They do bring back a couple of guys, Baskerville, and then Braylon Lux, who I think was one of the more undervalued guys. Like, he was one of your best players last year. He's looked really good in camp. He's going to be one of your starting quarters. And then the time has finally arrived for Mo Horn, former 4-star Under Armour All-American recruit out of Oklahoma, who's going to be the other starting cornerback. And he's a guy that when McGuire was asked who looked good in the first scrimmage, who looked good in the second scrimmage, Mo Horn was the first guy he mentioned both times. He talked about him being physical despite only weighing 180 pounds, but then also him being very aggressive in terms of fighting for the ball against receivers, that he made some great plays in those scrimmages against guys we talked about in our earlier video, receivers we think are going to have pretty good seasons as well. So really like them. Jalen Peoples is another dude who stepped up. He's been talked about having one of the best off seasons of anybody on the roster. So he gives you some depth. Devin Cromwell, I think, has made a late push in fall camp. They like him. And then your guy, who, man, when the coaches talk about him, they get a smile on their face. Chapman Lewis. It's the guy you talked about last year, really impressed you. And I think he's become, even though he's only a true sophomore, the more I hear and what I hear, the cues I listen for, he's become a real leader. He's the guy calling out a lot of the plays, despite him not being as experienced as some of the other guys. But the coaches love him. I think he's a big part of what, if they're going to accomplish anything in the secondary, I think Chapman Lewis has got a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was impressed, as you say, with him as a freshman last year. True freshman. Right? To be able to come in and pick things up so quickly. I mean, I think this is a guy, I mentioned Baskerville coordinating things back there.
He'll know some,
But, Lewis as well. That's a guy who probably got a very high football IQ.
Yeah.
And so somebody you want back there, who a young player really knows what he's doing. And I believe I read where Coach McGuire said something to the effect that we're just better when he's out there on the field.
That's right. Yep.
So a guy who just, maybe you hear this in basketball a lot, but some football players have intangibles too.
Yeah.
You know, and they just things work better. They make their teammates better. Chapman Lewis could be one of those guys, and he's an unsung player, I believe, who's going to make a really pretty massive impact this year.
Yeah,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And just to go back to Marion Horn a little bit, you mentioned a lot of the things that he has going for him, but man, the speed too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's one of the fastest cornerbacks Tech has had since I've been following this program, and that's a long time. So a real flyer at cornerback, and that's a pretty good position to have some speed at.
So there it is in terms of the roster and the depth on defense. I think the two big goals for Texas Tech is to affect the quarterback more than they did last year, which will give me my second goal: create more turnovers.
Yeah,
they do those two things. I believe the defense will improve greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. The turnovers, sometimes that can be a function of speed.
Yeah.
You got guys flying around creating havoc, which you do seem to have more speed, maybe in the secondary and at linebacker.
Yeah.
Creating pressure. And we've already mentioned some guys that have the potential to get after the quarterback.
Yep.
So if you've got heat on the quarterback and you've got guys flying around back there in the secondary, then it's just a matter of capitalizing on when a ball comes loose, when a ball gets tipped, something like that. And that could generate some more turnovers. But turnovers are just such a fickle thing and hard to predict. And you look at it on paper sometimes and you say, yeah, well, this defense should be able to create turnovers, and it doesn't happen. Sometimes just the opposite happens. These guys, well, where did all this come from?
Yeah.
And, coaches always say turnovers seem to come in bunches.
Yeah.
You may have a dry spell, and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 you're racking them up. So, it's just a big question mark. It's absolutely one of the topmost keys in winning football is winning that turnover battle.
Absolutely. Well, Mighty Joe, that's our preview for the defense. Texas Tech opens the season 6:30 Saturday night here at the Jones against Abilene Christian. Mighty Joe, great stuff from you as always. Thank y'all for watching, and until next time.